that's a big part of what our dunes look like. Half of them are covered, and we'll talk about that as we kind of do the tour today here of why that is. Section as we travel the tours, because realistically speaking, as we kind of go through these different areas, everything's a little bit different. On face value, it all kind of looks the same, but in reality of it is, it's really not. So I just told you, dunes are naturally formed. All this came from the ocean at one point in time, and everything out here is sand, which means everything growing out through here is sand. So whether we see water or trees or any of the grasses and things that are out along through here, all of it's within what we call sand dunes. Now this first section we're going through, we're leaving South Jetty. We're going to drop down to elevation here and go through a more flat area, and as we work our way out to the ocean, it's called Goose Pasture. Now this is going to be one of the first forests that we're going to talk about. This is a planted forest. It's not a natural forest out through here. These are trees that were introduced by the Forest Service as a means to stabilize the sand dunes, which you'll hear me use that term, stabilizing dunes, a couple of times throughout this trip. And instead of using a non-native plant like which was originally used in the 1900s, that was European beach grass, which you'll see growing along the edge of the trails through here, it was actually planted for the same purpose, but not using a non-native plant. So it gives it more of a natural coastal look out through here, but the reality of it is these trees aren't supposed to be here at all. They were introduced. So to kind of sum up the confusion out through here, just understand when we drive out on these tours, it was sand first, trees second, no matter where we go out through here. How the trees and forests get here, that's where it changes a little bit, and I'll talk about that later on in the tour. But just understand, a lot of the stuff that we go through right through here in this particular section, these were planted. They were not native to the sand dune. Now, stabilizing the dune is a big thing because the dunes are actually very large, and at one time were extremely destructive as they basically moved unchecked in a kind of in a westerly direction out across the open areas, covering up forest and other things. And so because of that, that's why a lot of this stuff was introduced out here, the beach grass, trees, things along those lines. It's to keeping that wind from moving these sand dunes around, covering up areas that they did not want covered up. So there was definitely a reason behind it. But again, keep in mind, half of our dunes are forested. The next section I'm going to talk about, which will be kind of more middle of the tour, is going to be called the deflation plain, and that's going to be totally different than what this area is, because this is a stabilized forested area. It's really not growing. It's just here. The deflation plain still grows and expands out of the sand dunes. So again, it's going to look kind of similar, but it's definitely not. Is when there was a first introduction of some type of a plant to stabilize the sand in the sand dunes themselves. What you end up with now currently is a lot of areas as a result of the introduction of the beach grass. So the beach grass is pretty crazy when you start taking into consideration that it lives and thrives right on the ocean there, like just right on the beach. It has the salt water, the salt air, the spray of the ocean, and everything else is cold, and it's getting beat up by the wind all the time, and yet it just absolutely lives there. So it's a pretty impressive plant in its own right. Now the seawall that it creates is a combination of that trapped sand and the beach grass. So the sand comes in from the ocean. That's originally where all of our sand dunes came from. Gets caught up in the beach grass. Beach grass goes over the top of the sand. More sand comes in, so on and so forth. You end up now currently with a seawall that has an average height of about 50 feet tall, keeps 100% of the sand coming in from the ocean, and it also basically stops the vast majority of water exiting the sand dunes. Now that might be a really weird statement, but understand, we get 70 or 80 inches of rainfall out through here. That water has to go somewhere. It forms up just like any other system would, runs down into lakes and streams and into the rivers. And in this particular case, those same features occur happens out through here. Little streams and creeks happen out through here as well, and that promotes the growth of a natural forest, and that's what this is. This is not planted. This is a direct result of the introduction of beach grass, flooding that occurs now because of the seawall that's there, and high water table levels, which allow aquatic wetland areas, plants, and then a forest to take root in the middle of the sand dunes. And this is a very natural forest. Now, this is the kind of the weird part about it. Nothing was really going to be done about it. This is actually overtaking our sand dunes at about 20 feet every year, and so it's pretty alarming rate how much dunes have already been covered up. Again, everything we see and everywhere we drive out through here once used to be open sand dunes, but is now currently gone. It's like I said, forest out through here. A lot of our wildlife that we have out here live in these forests, so whether it's a planted forest or this natural defoliation plain forest that we're looking at currently right now, it's still a big part of it. So deer and things like that run throughout your bear, coyotes, bobcat, mountain lion. Like I said, it's a really healthy environment out through here. Now, having said that, it's also a really beautiful area as we head out through here and you look through it. It's a dense forest. It's very, very healthy as well. This is it when you say, I'll point out really quick the tree island. So to the right of the vehicle is tree island number 1. In front of us is 2, and then they're going to go to the north, 3, 4, 5. Next stop after this is actually number 4, and we'll have a look at another unique feature out of the sand dunes, which is again a tree island. So here's the leading edge of the defoliation plain. This never dries out. The windier it is, the more dry sand blows off of this area through here, the wetter the sand actually looks. And this is what everything is growing out of that we basically have been driving through since we went over the top of the seawall and was driving through that forest. This is what all that's growing out of. So there's no drought time in here for any of those plants out through here. And we generally actually go through a drought time throughout the summer. We go through a few months without getting any rainfall. Now during the winter, this landscape looks completely different. This would be completely flooded. We get a lot of birds in the springtime and the fall. Well, usually more in the springtime, but you see a lot of birds come through that are migrating in the wetland areas. Ducks, things like that out and through here. And then as the summer goes along and that goes away, you don't see as much of it anymore. There's some campsites back over here, stuff to the left in these defoliation plain areas. You'll see some more of that native beach grass. They create what they call grass hummocks out through here, which is all over the landscape. But as we've been traveling, that's the direction that defoliation plain area grows, 20 feet every year to the east until the next 100 years, which is when the forest assessments that we're saying is going to be grown. So again, keep in mind, now again, I'll go back to the different types of forest. That first forest we went to was planted. That forest is not expanding anymore. That is a stable forest. The defoliation plain forest was not planted and is naturally growing towards the east because as these sand dunes blow away, that leaves that flat area for the wetland areas and then the forest to overtake it. Again, that's a 20-40 year process. Now we're going to go away from all of that, getting onto some of the taller sand dunes. Again, next stop on the tour is over at Tree Island. We'll see how unique the Tree Island feature is out there. Tree islands, they look very similar in the sense that if you sit next to them at some point in time throughout the year, there will be some form of water in the bottom of them. They will be protected. You will see signs indicating so around it as the Forest Service putting up area restriction signs. and there's going to be sand around it. Now, how tall the dunes, what kind of formation goes around it, that's totally different. This one here has like a half bowl around it. Some of the other ones are completely circular all the way around bowls. It just really kind of depends. Now, as we look at Tree Island again, this is a native tree stand. So this part of more of what the dunes actually would have naturally looked like. There would have been sand dunes out through here moving around, covering up forest, exposing forest. There's no ever like definitive time that the sand dunes aren't moving. If the wind is blowing, the dunes are moving. And you got to remember these things are created over thousands of years, but they do and can move on an hourly basis in the summertime. So looking over to the left here, you'll see some stumps in the bottom, and this is what I was telling you about. There are ghost forest and tree stumps all over the place out through here. They are in the most randomest spots, but generally speaking, they're going to be in the lower level areas where the water would accumulate, and in this particular instance, by Tree Island. The water is fresh, it's not affected by tides or ocean or anything like that. This is just at 80 inches of rainfall, looking for a place to go, and it finds them over here. You get a couple of high annual rainfall amounts above 80, like say closer to 90, maybe 100. These things are going to get close to about 10 feet deep, get closer rainfall amounts lower to the 60s or the upper 50s, and they're probably going to dry up as the season goes along. Now, in this particular case, we're on the eastern boundary of it, but the boundary is not something that is definitely in the same spot all of the time. In this particular case, we're going to go by a couple more, the one more Tree Island. We're right next to Honeyman State Park. Once you get around this Tree Island, you start getting out away from Honeyman. There's about another quarter more mile of riding area east before the dune goes up against the natural forest zone, and then works its way back out again as it gets around residential areas and things like that. waypoints out through here. They use parking lots. There's only so many places you can get out of the sand. It's through either way. It's when you just start driving around in circles that will generally lead yourself to confusion. But any high vantage point, you can see very distinctive landmarks. Now, they say that if you're out here after hours and it's dark out, you just throw it all out the window. You can't see anything out through here. It looks completely different. It makes you feel like you're on the surface of the moon or something like that. It's really kind of an eerie feeling. It's still really fun. During the summertime, it's not as big of an issue. During the winter, it starts getting dark at like say 5 o'clock at night. They get that kind of get dark pretty early out through here. And in those instances there, if you're out on the sand and something goes wrong, you broke down, trying to figure out your way back, especially if you don't know the area very well, can be rather challenging. But I always point this out. As long as you're going in one direction, you're generally pretty fine. Everything goes back to the trail system eventually. You see that even here, as we work our way north here, back into some of the areas we've already gone through, starting with Goose Path, which is this trail is going to take us to. Essentially, it's just a seasonal look to the sand dunes, and that would be for us in the summertime. And the shapes it creates are rather challenging for riding out through here. Hard to see in some cases. Some of it's light conditions, some of it's how much wind's blowing out through here, time of day, things like that. So whether it's in the evening and the sun setting and the shadows are about, you can see shadows down or middle of the afternoon when it almost looks like snow blindness, or at night when it's dark and all you have is headlights. They, like I said, they present themselves a challenge. But most of it is direction of travel. So as we go into the wind, you can see it's very, very easy to see, but when we go with the wind, it's completely different. And that's something that a lot of novice riders have to sometimes figure out the hard way, which is going off one of those thinking it's just flat as you go across in particular areas. Now, that's generally, I'd say, a summer issue, but in the most aspects, there's some form of a drift that forms throughout the wintertime, whether it's summer or winter. But this is just a definite summer pattern to the sand dunes that you see with these drifting transverse dunes. Here of what I'm going to try and point out is basically still all sand dunes. It's kind of hard to believe, but essentially from here to the base of the mountain range, which you can barely vaguely see way off in the distance here in front of us, is all sand dunes. Now we happen to be looking out across the city of Florence and north beyond the city, but the whole area is sand. It's not part of the recreation area like we're currently driving on in. Obviously we got these large sand dunes. We can see all the sand all around us, but same thing as I was telling you at the beginning of the tour, everything is growing out of it. In this particular case with Florence, not only is it growing out of it, it's built on top of it. Now you see the river system as well as again, we'll work its way around, dump into the ocean. That'd be the Slatysil River. And again, we're on top of South Jetty Hill, so we got one more dune we're going to go down, which is going to take us through the parking lot there, and then we'll work right back up to Sandline Adventures.